Right, I know what you're thinking, and yes, I mean every single word of that title. Completely, 100%, I mean it. So the TLDR is that the reason the collabs have been so fucked on the English side is actually nothing to do with English Bushiroad. I think it's entirely to do with Japan Bushiroad. Before I get any further, I'm going to clarify that everything I say in this video, nothing has been told to me by Bushiroad staff or anything. What it has been is that me putting little bits and pieces together, as well as some evidence from what happened over in Weishwartz, which has basically put me onto this theory. It is just a theory, but I think it's pretty accurate. Or certainly, if it's not exactly what happened, I think it's pretty close to the truth. Right, so let's sort of get started. The first thing I want to do is have some sort of background. So, for those of you who don't know, it's pretty much confirmed at this point that we're not really going to be getting any more collabs in English. Now, the reasons for this are like there are several. I won't get into all of them, but the main ones are the fact that the biggest one is the complete lack of sales, and the lack of sales is in the biggest part rooted in the delay. So the fact that like the set is not set, it's a twofold reason with that delay basically. So the set comes out delayed, and what that means is one, we're already several months behind the Japanese release on it because they've all released several months late. And I'm going to show you a little graph, a little thing to illustrate that, so you kind of understand. But also, so we're already behind, so we're kind of missing the hype train, right? But that shouldn't be, like if you're a really big fan of what the show or whatever, right? So it's kind of three reasons. We're losing a big portion of the hype train. Secondly, we're losing pretty much all of the competitive value for these sets, which is like a really big thing. And the third thing is the fact that Bushiroad doesn't really understand their player base, in that how many of us really value the competitiveness of these cards. When you have a player base as small as Buddyfight, you have to understand that a majority of us are competitive players at this point. Like, we go for regionals, we're not going to spend money on a deck just to play it for fun. Because, I mean, from my perspective, I can just print out the cards and have fun at home, right? Like with my friends. I don't need to do that. If I'm going to a regionals, if I'm going to actually invest in the cardboard, it better be fucking playable. I don't want to be getting ripped off, right? So those are sort of the reasons why the collabs, the biggest reasons why the collabs have sort of been doing well. Now, we won't get into the choice of collabs. Personally, I think they're great choices for Japan side. For English side, kind of varies, but we won't get into that. So that's sort of the foundation. Now, what has happened is, if I take us over to this little graph here that I made. So I think you can see everything. Right. So as you can see here, I've got the set lists, as well as next to them, I've got the date they were announced in Japan. So this is the earliest we knew of them. This isn't the English announcement. This is the Japanese announcement. And then the release date over next to that is the English release date. So this is the date it came out in English. Now, what it turns out is, I'm not sure why the Conan ones come out fucked, but that was 5th February. For some reason it's looking like that. I don't know why. So now if you look down there, you notice that those graphs are basically identical. And actually, if I can scroll down a bit, can I show you this? Yeah, there we go. Right. So what you'll notice is that there is the gap between the announce date and the release date is pretty much constant for all of the collabs. And what I want to tell you about that is that it is exactly 6 months. Now that's important, and I'm going to now explain why that's important. So, whilst at Worlds, I had some conversations with several different members of Bushiroad staff, obviously not going to say who they are, and they told me a couple of things. The first thing was that they told me that the production for Worlds promos takes place 6 months before Worlds. So, at a bare minimum, you can expect that it takes at least 6 months for any kind of card to be produced, go through production, quality assurance, all that kind of stuff. Beginning to end, it's going to be at least 6 months, assuming they've got all the cards ready and they're ready to print. They're not including R&D and stuff. So that told me that. The second piece of information was that I was told that the reason we were getting the collabs so late was because of licensing issues. And that's just bullshit. It doesn't make any sense at all. I don't know. Obviously, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not like anything like that. So I don't really have any. I don't have any background in knowing exactly how these kind of things are created. But what I do know is that when you secure the license for Japanese, it would probably make sense for you to, at the same time or very soon after, secure the license for English. That seems like a logical thing to do. And what that would mean is that the delay would be much more similar to a normal Buddyfight set, maybe a month at most. That's generally what it's been recently for the majority of the lifetime of the game. We had simultaneous releases back at the start. And you see here that it's exactly 6 months every single time from Japanese announcement to English release. So, what I think has happened is that the Japanese side of Buddyfight has told English side absolutely nothing. They have been given no information at all about the collabs prior to their release or their announcement in Japanese. At this point, English Bushiroad has the information. They're told it. Maybe they get it like a week in advance or something, right? Like basically a piss take amount in advance. So English Bushiroad now scrambles together, gets production together, starts printing, sorts out all the licensing, whatever. I cannot imagine the licensing is that difficult to handle. And even if we give a little bit of credit and assume they get like a month notice before the Japanese, so that's like easily enough time. And then they have to go into production and produce everything. So, basically my theory is that the reason the collabs are doing so shit is because whilst Japan, for example, with Conan, saw that was announced in February. So whilst Japan was probably producing that set in like October 2018, English Bushiroad didn't start producing that set till at the earliest January. And I imagine they probably did start producing it in January because there ended up being a 1 month delay in the release of that set. I ended up cancelling the case because of that 1 month delay, which actually brought it up to that 6 month barrier. And that one makes the most sense because that was the start of the year big announcement thing. That is something that like there were other things announced there beyond collabs. So I would imagine that Japanese Bushiroad would have actually given English Bushiroad that information further in advance. But if you look at all the other ones, it's pretty much 6 months every time. It's damn near close to it. So yeah, that is basically my theory. I think that Japanese HQ has not been telling Bushiroad English about the collabs until they are announced on the Japanese side. And that's why we have them with a 6 month delay. And that's why we're not going to get any more collabs because it's just not worth it. The only collab I could see us maybe getting would be Sword Art Online, just because of the sheer popularity of that, and like that's probably going to be enough to counteract the lack of like the lack of playability or like the power creep since then. Though I'm not too confident on that. Metabot is definitely strong enough to compete. But it's, I mean, no one is going to play it here. It has the same level of following as Conan, basically. So, I mean, and they saw how Conan sold, so they're not going to sell Metabot. SAO has a chance, but it would come out in June. So, like, we won't hear about it till May, if it is coming out. So we'll see. I think we might get SAO because it was far and away the most popular one on the poll. But anyway, The last little piece of evidence that I had for why I think this is true is I was told that a similar thing happened in Vice. And basically what happened there is that Cardcaptor Sakura was announced as an English exclusive Vice set. And I'm just going to get up exactly what I was told. So the Cardcaptor Sakura set, which was the first exclusive English Vice set, at one point before it came out, the Japanese Vice set, the Japanese Vice said, "Oh yeah, we're doing one for Japan too," and the English Vice R&D did not know until it was announced. So I don't have the exact details on that. I'm trying to get them, but I just figured I'm just going to make the video. It's not that important. I think all the other evidence is enough, and you don't really know the specifics there to understand that there is a lack of internal communication there. There is something happening where English R&D is just not being told what is happening in Japan, which is nuts. I cannot believe that Bushiroad is able to function like that. I mean, to me that's insane. But anyway, that is my tinfoil hat theory. I don't really think it's a tinfoil hat theory. I think it's what's happened. But let me know. And yeah, alright. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.